Welcome to Lento English. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories, slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
One introduction. Europe is a continent with a long, rich history. It is home to many different countries and cultures. However, in late 2024 and throughout 2025, Europe is in a very difficult place. Experts call this time a fragile moment. Fragile means that the situation is delicate and could easily become worse. One main problem is the economy. Economic growth is happening, but it is very slow. When growth is slow, people do not feel safe about their jobs or their money. This lack of fast growth creates widespread anxiety across many nations. People are worried about many things, and these worries are all happening at the same time. This is a key part of the problem. Europe is dealing with financial issues, security concerns, and environmental changes all at once. The anxiety people feel focuses on three major areas. First, there is worry about money and the cost of living. Prices for essential items have risen quickly. Second, there is deep concern about war and safety, especially due to conflicts near the continent's borders. Third, the weather and climate change present serious, ongoing challenges that require large investments and new ways of living. These three complex challenges, money, war, and weather, create a heavy burden for governments and families. It is important to look at this situation without assigning blame. The difficulties Europe faces are complex. They are the result of many different factors over the last few years. The goal is to understand the current position clearly. Many things that used to be stable are now changing rapidly. For example, energy supplies have changed, and the number of workers available for jobs is also changing. These shifts affect daily life for hundreds of millions of people. Solving these problems is necessary for Europe's stable future. The continent cannot afford to fix only one problem and ignore the others. If leaders only focus on economic growth, the issues of war and climate will remain and grow larger. Therefore, Europe must solve these multiple, complex problems simultaneously. Simultaneously means fixing all of them at the exact same time. This requires a great deal of cooperation and careful planning between all the countries. The decisions made in 2025 will determine the direction of Europe for the next 10 or 20 years. The next chapters will examine these specific challenges in more detail, starting with the problems related to money and prices. 2. Money and prices. For many years, the cost of things in Europe did not change much. Prices were stable. This was helpful for families and businesses. But now, this time of stable prices has ended. Recently, everything started to cost more money. This problem is called inflation. Inflation means that your money buys less than it did before. It feels like the value of money is shrinking every day. In 2025, the rate of inflation is slowing down a bit. This is good news for governments. However, the costs of daily life are still very high for most people. Two things are especially expensive and cause great stress: food and rent. People must eat and they must have a place to live. These are basic necessities. When food and rent prices increase quickly, it creates a serious cost of living crisis across the continent. Families must spend a much larger part of their monthly money just to cover these basic needs. they have little left over for other things. This high cost of living changes how people act with their finances. Families worry deeply about their budgets and the immediate future. They decide that they must save their money instead of spending it on things they do not absolutely need, like new clothes, toys, or trips. People are now very careful with every euro they spend. They often choose cheaper products at the grocery store or delay buying new items for their homes. When families save their money, local businesses suffer greatly. Shops, restaurants, and small companies need people to buy things regularly to stay open. If people stop spending on non-essential items, these businesses earn less money. Some small businesses might even have to close down. This lack of spending is a problem because it slows down the entire economy, making it harder for Europe to grow stronger. This cycle of high prices leading to low spending is difficult to break. A major part of Europe's economic health depends on Germany. Germany is often called the engine of Europe. It is the largest economy and makes many important industrial things, like high-quality cars and complex machines. When Germany is strong, the whole continent usually benefits because other countries sell parts and services to German factories. But right now, Germany's economy is weak. Its manufacturing sector is struggling to grow quickly. This slowdown creates fear and uncertainty across the entire European market. If the biggest economic engine slows down dramatically, the entire European economic train moves slower. This means that problems in Berlin or Munich quickly become problems in Paris, Rome, or Madrid. Experts are watching Germany closely because its recovery is essential for the stability and success of everyone else. Solving the challenges of high prices, low consumer spending, and Germany's industrial slowdown is a critical task for Europe in this difficult period. 3. Energy and power. Europe has a big goal, changing how it makes electricity. It wants to stop using old fuels like oil and gas. This is a massive task for the continent. Instead, Europe is moving quickly towards green energy sources. This includes power that comes from the wind and power that comes from the sun. These clean energy sources are important for the future of the planet and the environment. This shift is already very noticeable. Today, more than half of all the electricity used across Europe comes from these clean sources. This is good news for the environment and for the global fight against climate change. However, changing the entire energy system is proving to be very difficult and complex for many reasons. One major challenge is the physical infrastructure. The electricity networks, often called grids, are very old. They were not built to handle the way new power works. Wind and solar power are not always steady. When the wind blows strongly, the system gets a lot of power all at once. When the sky is cloudy or the sun goes down, the system gets much less power. The old networks struggle greatly to manage this constant, quick change in supply. Updating these old electricity grids requires massive investment. It is a big, expensive job that must be done quickly. Another major problem is the cost of energy for businesses and industry. Factories and large industrial facilities need huge amounts of power to make their products. These energy costs remain too high for them to manage easily. This high cost is directly linked to where Europe gets its natural gas. For many years, Europe bought cheap gas that traveled through pipelines from Russia. This supply of cheap gas helped keep factory costs low and industrial production strong. Now, Europe cannot buy this cheap gas from Russia anymore due to the current situation. Instead, European countries must buy gas from new, further away places. They buy very expensive gas transported by ship from other nations, such as the United States of America and Qatar. This shift means the price of energy remains high. When energy is expensive, it costs factories more money to produce things. This means that European factories find it hard to compete with companies in other parts of the world where power is cheaper. This burden of high energy costs slows down industrial production across the entire continent. Solving the energy supply problem is a critical step towards making the European economy strong and stable again. 4. Old and young people. Europe is facing a big population problem. This is called a demographic crisis. It means the number of old people is growing quickly, but the number of young people is not growing at the same speed. This lack of balance is a serious issue. People in Europe are living for a very long time now. This increase in life expectancy is very good news. However, families are having fewer babies than in the past. This means that when a large number of people retire, there are not enough young adults to take over their work and pay taxes for the next generation. There is now a severe shortage of workers across the continent. Essential jobs are going unfilled, and this affects everyone's daily life. The lack of staff is hurting many different parts of the economy. For example, the healthcare sector is struggling. Hospitals need many more nurses and doctors to care for the aging population. The hospitality sector, which includes restaurants and hotels, is searching for staff every day. Furthermore, factories and companies that make things known as manufacturing also need many workers to produce goods. If these sectors cannot find the people they need, services slow down or stop completely. This problem is very large, especially in the biggest European economies. Countries like Germany and Spain need millions of new workers very soon. Without these workers, it is difficult for these nations to keep their economies strong and growing. Finding these new employees is a major challenge for governments and businesses. It is an economic necessity to find active people to fill these roles. The systems that support older citizens, such as pensions and health care, rely on money paid by the younger workforce. One important trend is helping to ease the pressure on the labor market. Many older employees are now choosing to stay in their jobs longer than before. People who are over 55 years old are continuing to work past the traditional retirement age. They provide valuable experience and knowledge to their companies. This helps to bridge the gap until Europe can find a long-term solution to the demographic shift. This movement of older workers remaining employed helps the economy continue to function while countries try to manage the deep changes in the population structure. 5. War and safety. The war in Ukraine continues to be a major worry for the entire continent. It has now been going on for a long time. Because of this, European countries are feeling tired. This is not physical tiredness. It is financial fatigue. They have spent a great deal of money to help Ukraine. This money goes towards military aid, weapons, and humanitarian support. This continuous spending puts a large stress on the budgets of many nations across Europe. Governments must find ways to pay for this help while also supporting their own citizens. The need to finance the war effort is one of the biggest challenges facing the economy in 2025. Safety is also a growing concern. For many years, Europe depended heavily on the United States for protection. The U.S. military helped keep the continent secure. However, there is rising anxiety about this support. Many Europeans fear that the U.S. government might change its policy. They worry that the United States could decide to stop helping Europe or reduce its military presence in the future. This potential change means that Europe must plan to be more responsible for its own defense. European leaders now agree that they must spend more money on their own armies and defense systems. They need stronger military forces and better technology to ensure safety, even without full support from the U.S. Building up armies is extremely expensive. It requires huge amounts of new funding. Countries are buying new equipment, such as tanks and planes. They are also increasing their stockpiles of ammunition. This spending is necessary for security, but it creates a difficult choice for governments. This difficult choice is called a trade-off. Every euro spent on a new defense system is a euro that cannot be spent somewhere else. For example, governments must choose between buying new fighter jets or using that money to improve local schools. They must decide between spending on better missile defense or investing in new hospitals and social services. Finding the right balance between defense and domestic needs is very hard for politicians. The commitment to defense means a long-term change in how Europe uses its money. Many countries are now trying to reach a target of spending 2% of their entire national budget on defense. This goal takes time and effort. This new focus on war readiness changes the economic picture for every country on the continent. 6. People moving. The movement of people is a very strong topic in Europe. This issue, called migration, causes strong feelings among many citizens. It is a central point of discussion in politics across the continent. In the beginning of 2025, the actual number of people crossing borders illegally went down. The data showed that fewer people were trying to enter Europe without permission. However, the public worry about migration did not decrease. Many people across Europe are still unhappy with the current situation. Because of these persistent feelings, new political parties are becoming very popular. These parties often focus their campaigns almost entirely on the topic of migration. They usually have strong ideas about who should be allowed to enter a country and who should not. These new political groups often want to make borders much stronger and more difficult to cross. They often state that they want to close the borders completely. They also suggest policies to send migrants who are already living in Europe back to their home countries. This desire for strict control is a main part of their message to voters. This focus on very strict policies creates major arguments inside the European Union. The 27 member countries do not agree on how to manage migration. There are deep disagreements between nations that want strict rules and nations that want more open policies. Some European countries believe that policies must be very tough. They want maximum control over who enters their territory. They believe that closing borders is the best way to keep their citizens safe and maintain national order. They worry about the social and financial cost of new arrivals. Other countries have a different view. They want policies that are more welcoming and open. They recognize that Europe needs millions of new workers as the population is aging. These countries believe that allowing people to move helps the economy grow. They think Europe should welcome people seeking a new life and filling necessary jobs. This major disagreement makes it extremely hard for the European Union to create one single, unified plan. A unified plan means all countries follow the same rules about borders and entry, but every country faces different internal political pressures. Finding a migration policy that satisfies all member states is a huge challenge. The EU must find a way for countries to work together, even when their opinions about borders and national policy are very far apart. This issue remains one of the greatest tests for European unity today. 7. Cars and computers. The world is changing very fast because of new technology. Computers, the internet, and smart machines are now important for every business. Europe is in a difficult race with other large global powers. The United States of America and China are the clear leaders in new technology. Europe is trying hard, but it is falling behind these two countries. This lack of speed is visible in two main areas: cars and computers. The first area is the car industry. Europe has always been famous for making high-quality cars. Countries like Germany and France rely on car manufacturing for many jobs. However, the world is moving quickly to electric vehicles, or EVs. European car makers are building more EVs, but they face very strong competition. Companies from Asia, especially China, are selling electric cars that are much cheaper. It is difficult for European companies to compete with these low prices. This situation creates worry about the future of many factories and the jobs they provide across the continent. Technology itself is the second problem. Europe does not have many large global technology companies. The United States has companies like Google and Apple. China has its own powerful tech giants. Europe does not have many equivalent companies that lead in the field of artificial intelligence, or AI. AI is when computers can learn and think like people. This technology will change many parts of the economy. Because Europe is slow in developing AI and other smart tools, there is a risk. If the new big ideas and the powerful technology companies are mostly outside Europe, the best new jobs will also be outside Europe. This makes many people worry about the quality and availability of future work. Governments know they must act quickly. They need to spend more money on research and new ideas. They must also help the traditional industries, like car manufacturing, change fast to keep up. If Europe cannot catch up in the technology race, the economy will struggle more. Finding ways to create new European technology leaders is a critical task for the coming years to ensure future stability and growth. 8. What comes next? Europe faces many large challenges today, but the story is not finished. There is still hope for recovery and a stronger future. However, the path ahead is difficult. Experts say the road is bumpy. Europe has a long history of fixing problems, and the key now is finding the right way to move forward. The main group working to solve these issues is the European Union. The Union is very active right now. Leaders are trying hard to make new laws that will help the continent. These laws focus on two main areas: helping businesses grow and protecting the climate. The goal for businesses is to make them more competitive in the world. They must compete with large economies like the United States and China, especially in new fields like technology and electric cars. The goal for the climate is to continue the change to green energy, making sure that more than half of Europe's power comes from clean sources like the sun and the wind. This work requires time and money. It also requires something even more important: unity. Unity means that all the countries in Europe must agree and work together. If the nations fight or disagree often, it is impossible for the European Union to pass the necessary laws quickly. Big problems such as managing high energy costs, finding millions of new workers, or agreeing on migration rules cannot be solved by one country alone. Cooperation is critical for success. When the countries stand together, they can support each other's economies. They can make the whole continent strong again. This means sharing resources and ideas about defense spending and technology development. If they fail to cooperate, the fragile situation will become worse. Europe must manage many difficult tasks at the same time. It must support Ukraine while increasing its own defense spending. It must transition to green energy while keeping prices low for factories. It must deal with an aging population while finding the staff needed for hospitals and restaurants. The year 2025 is a time of major tests for Europe. The decisions made now about unity and cooperation will decide the success of this story and the future stability of the continent.